Okay, so we are live. Good morning and welcome everyone to this fourth session on Mindful Saturdays at Giri's Adda. This is Giri from the Adda this morning. There also will be conversation on mindfulness for this year, and we look forward to many more conversations like this in 2021. First of all, let me thank you all, Harini, Indira, and Ananya for uh, staying with this conversation, for sharing your remarkable insights, your experiences. I truly appreciate the time that you have given for this conversation, uh, over the last couple of months. And I think a lot of our friends and colleagues who have tuned in have also appreciated, these discussions. Many are looking forward to more such conversations as we move on. Uh, and I also want to, begin by thanking our friends and colleagues who've been very supportive, very encouraging in this conversation. And without you, in fact, these conversations actually don't mean much. Uh, for today, we have looked at a topic which I think is really very, very crucial to the many things that we have discussed so far. And in today's conversation, we will be exploring the mind-body connection. Does the mind influence the body? Does the body influence the mind? What is the connection there? The reason why we have brought this up is uh, there are many a times where we feel that there is something which is not all right in our bodies, and we often try to address these issues by medicating and thinking that the problem will go away. But I think a closer look will tell us that the problems are a lot more deeper. And if we start exploring those, we arrive at some very, very interesting and enriching understandings about how our bodies and minds work together. So this is something that we want to explore today. Uh, if you remember the last session that we had on Saturday, in which we had our friends Anuradha, Karishma, and Tehseen, who were the three cyclists from Raipur, they also, in fact, talked about. In fact, I think Anuradha and Karishma talked a lot about how they used cycling as an activity to address issues related to health, which would have probably, in a conventional sense, it would have taken them to the doctor or a surgeon to set things right. And I think that again, propelled us to think that probably we should explore this a little more deeply, a little more mindfully. And I'm really looking forward and excited to hear from Ananya, Indira, and Harini on this. For those of our friends who are tuning in for the first time, a very, very quick introduction to uh, our guests this morning. Indira is an advocate based in Delhi. She practices in the Supreme Court, and she works for the rights of disadvantaged people. Harini works as an educator with the Center for Learning Resources that is based in Pune, and her area of interest includes early childhood development and education. Ananya works with the United Nations Children's Fund based out of Guwahati. She looks into the areas of social policy. And what unites them all as a panel is the fact that all of them are passionate mindfulness meditation practitioners. Uh, they've been at it for several years. They are into counseling, support, etc., through mindfulness. So, welcome again to all of you for this very special broadcast today. Before I open up the floor and invite your thoughts, uh, I want to begin with a quote of Deepak Chopra that I came across very recently. Deepak Chopra, as everyone knows, is a world-renowned doctor who has delved very deeply into the mind-body connect. And let's hear what he has to say. I begin the quote. If this sounds too mystical, refer again to the body. Every significant vital sign, body temperature, heart rate, oxygen consumption, hormone levels, brain activity, and so on, alters the moment you decide to do anything. Decisions are signals telling your body, mind, and environment to move in a certain direction. This is amazing, isn't it? And if anyone, I mean, whoever has read the works of Deepak Chopra will also realize that these are not just anecdotal statements that he's making. There's a lot of evidence that he brings forth to the table. And I'm sure there are many other, people, many other practitioners, many other researchers, doctors, and so on who have said the same things in probably different languages. So that, in a way, sets up this discussion for today uh, morning. So my question to you, Indira, Harini, and Ananya, in that order, this morning is: how do you understand this mind-body connect? What does it mean for you? What does it hold for you? What are your experiences of having to look at this as an individual? And of course, why do you think this is important? So, may I invite Indira to share her thoughts on this? You'll have to
Indira,
unmute yourself. Yeah.
yeah, sorry, thank you. Uh, I said hello and welcome everyone. It's a delight to be back again. I actually thought the order was a little different, Giri. I thought Ananya was opening today.
Oh, okay.
Is
Okay.
that
Yeah, maybe
so?
then Ananya could go. I don't have a
Is
problem with
that
that.
okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Ananya, you and then Ananya, Harini, and then you. Yeah,
Harini
okay.
and me. Yes, yes.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Ananya, over to you. I'm sorry about that confusion.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Mm, if I have to talk about mind body connect, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
loud and clear.
Yeah. What comes to my mind is that often we look at mind and body as two separate entities. At times, our body is ruling the mind, and the mind just goes on and on and on. Sorry, the body goes on and on. And at times, we allow our mind to rule over our body. Uh, to me, it means when I look at mind body connect, it means a sense of wholeness. When you look at mind and body together, it is more about being a much wholer and complete rather than treating the instrument, which is the body here, and the mind separately. And it doesn't go that way as well. So it's not necessary that what we do in our body has a profound significance on our mind and vice versa.
Hmm.
I don't want to get into the details because there's a lot of research, lot of scientific evidence, and lot of various kinds of research articles which are coming up on that. But possibly, I feel that what to me means a lot is that finally we express ourselves through our body.
Hmm.
The way we present ourselves, whether our presence itself is through the body. And the unification between the mind, body, and the spirit, if I may use this word, is very important, because when those three come in unison, then you have a presence which is inwardly centered and outwardly ready for some action. And that also calls for practice. So it's not something that comes to you in a day or two, and it is very different from a practice of motor skill building and motor, coordination and things like that, over which are important. But it's more about setting up an intention for yourself as to how you connect your mind and body together in a way that you are centered within, and from that centeredness you express yourself. And we are constantly expressing ourselves, actually. So whether we are simply sitting in silence as well, we are interacting with ourselves and we are interacting with the environment, or whether we are interacting, say, for example, in this conversation. If I see myself, I am right now using a lot of my sense organs while I'm interacting. So each one of us are constantly in a mode of interaction, and that's possible to do in a very relaxed and in a very mindful way. Only once we bring these two elements together, and we also bring our spirit together to it. So there is a sense of wholeness there, and not a sense of separateness of of everything being separate from each other. So it's not that the mind and the body are separate from each other, but rather they are an organ, but they come together as two parts, and they make it a whole. That is where I feel the mind body connect is important, and the synchronization is very important. I also think that many a times, in present day, we are very conscious, or we are getting more conscious about our body in terms of our weight, in terms of the sickness that we might have. And there is a lot right now that is available in media in different forms, which kind of endorses certain body image. One part of it is that. The other is that where we are told to kind of look into what kind of a diet and so on and so forth we need to have so that we can have a healthy body. I
Hmm.
feel that it is very important for us to understand, or to kind of look at the intentionality of doing something. So, for example, if it's not so important as to what kind of a physical work that I'm doing, but it is the intention with which I'm doing actually which makes a difference. So, if the intention here is to see that I bring my mind, body, and my spirit in synchronization in such a way that I'm centered within, then possibly any kinds of physical activity would help me to train myself in a particular way. So then my training itself becomes very different. Say, for example, at that case, my training will not be so much possibly on just focusing on losing weight come what may, but looking at losing weight as a part of the process itself and enjoying that process. So it comes from a place of self compassion, I feel. So it's the intentionality that we set as to how we look at our mind and body. I find that to be very important. And in that, I feel that self compassion is very important. Oftentimes, we kind of blame our bodies. For example, if we have some sickness, and I have done it many times, possibly I even do it now at times, but much less over a period of time. So many a times we kind of blame our bodies that, why can't the body listen to me? But are we at all reflecting? Are we listening to our body? So that's a question at times it's useful to pose to ourselves. There are
Hmm.
times when we feel I have a lot of flab here, I have a lot of flab there, and then blame that body part. But instead of that, can we set up an intention of where we care for our body and the body organs, and then work towards it? In terms of your question as to how mindfulness has helped, I feel that the breath is a very good connector of mind and body. Say, for example, I have over time tried to develop my faculty, if I may use that word, to get into my body from time to time. So I have looked into seeing that what am I right now feeling, and I have over time set up that kind of a practice. So right now it has become, in a way, a bit. I don't know the word. It's not automatic, but the thought comes back to me maybe after an hour or so. I just see how my body is right now feeling. So, what are the different sensations in my body? And then I have been able to, at some time, understand some of those sensations in my body. I'll just give an example. Um, when one is at a workspace, there are at times when you have multiple deadlines, or there might be tasks one lined up after the other. So we generally tend to move from one task to the other to the other. So and at times that's also a kind of a happy experience because it shuts up your adrenaline. So you feel a sense of achievement as you are moving from one to the other. But I have at times noted that when I have done that to myself, or when I'm overwhelmed, there are too many timelines, there are too many tasks up on the list. There is a kind of a knot I have felt, or I feel even today. I mean, not right now. I'm saying that even right these years as well. I at times I feel that. So I feel that kind of a tight band on my head, and many a times possibly I'm not even aware. I'm not aware in my mind what it's going through. But the moment I feel that tight band, I then know that I have to take a step back and I'll have to see. So typically what I do is that I would then either get up from my chair if I'm sitting and working in the computer, and then take a walk if possible, if the environment allows me, or at least to go back to my breath and take 3 breaths and say that, the moment you take 3 breaths and you calm yourself, I have found that that kind of releases that tight band from my head. So it's here where my body is sending a signal to me, and listening to my body helps me to kind of then take that back sit and say, okay, take a pause right now, and you can come back to it after a few moments. So that has been very helpful. I have also often felt that if I have anger, I do feel a tension in my neck, and also in my head at times, and there have been times when I did not, or I do not understand that I'm angry, but when I get that feeling, then I know, okay, something is coming up. And at times just sitting with it has also helped me, and just breathing with it has helped me to kind of get out of it. There are times when there are certain sensations happening in your hands or in your feet, and over time you kind of tend to understand what those sensations are for. At times those sensations are possibly more about about sadness, that there is a sense of sadness in you and it wallows up, and then you know that how that sadness is manifesting itself in your body. And that at times have helped me to see, okay, what do I then do if my body is manifesting that degree of sadness? So here as well, I find that that's a very intrinsic connect. Yoga has definitely helped me a lot in understanding the mind body connect. I think that's a wonderful practice along with mindful walking, about which I think I had spoken in my first session,
Yeah.
which has helped me to look at the mind body connect very closely. I think yoga is such a wonderful practice because it brings your body, it brings your mind, it brings your breath in coordination. So the moment the three gets coordinated, you can see that synchronization happening, and then there is a sense of wholeness. So all these that I say are possibly, things to be experienced. I can just share what one feels, but finally it is about how you experience and how you train yourself. So
Hmm.
there is no shortcut to it. It's possibly a matter of training oneself. And as I say this right now, I still feel I have a long way to go. So yes, I have made some progress in some areas, possibly a little more progress than in others. But I also feel that that's a lifelong commitment to see how one goes back to one's body time and again. And as we become more self-compassionate towards our body, obviously sickness and all take a bay. So I have also a lot of sicknesses I have had. I have had hypertension, I have had thyroid. I have also had a very lingering backache, and the backache has been with me for last 4 to 5 years. It's at the tail end of my spinal cord, and it's called the coccyx pain because it's the tailbone pain, and it can really be very painful. But I have established a kind of a relationship with that pain actually, and I feel that it's my practice which helped me to establish that relationship. So it's basically you know so it's basically the pain itself at times becomes a reminder for me, and I understand that that pain is possibly telling me a lot more than I'm at all willing to admit to myself. Possibly at times it tells me about repressed emotions or suppressed emotions. At times possibly it is talking to me about a suppressed anger or a suppressed sadness. And relating to that pain, to that tailbone pain over time, has made me understand that there is a bit of a gap between my own self or this wholeness and the pain. And whether
Hmm.
it's a emotional pain or a physical pain, there can be a gap. And as so the relationship with physical pain for me has also changed a lot. And as I started looking at this physical pain, which has been very uncomfortable at times, and at times I have been in bed for more than 2 weeks with this pain. But over the last few months, I have seen a shift. And I could see that shift. I think one of the reasons for the shift has been being able to relate to that pain, able to make it a friend rather than a foe, able to be making it more a guide to as a it has become a kind of an inner compass for me. So whenever I have that shooting pain, I know there is something somewhere wrong. And then as one examines it, one will possibly at times come up with a with a eureka that, oh, possibly this is where something is wrong. So it is an inner compass as well. So all that I want to say is that at times pain can also be very useful, whether it's emotional or physical, and establishing a beautiful relationship with pain is also very beautiful indeed. So that's all that I have to share. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Ananya. I think you have really traversed a very, very large territory. And, this whole aspect of looking at mind body as a single, as an entity in a whole, and not looking at it as a separate entity. However, you also raise the concern that we sometimes overdo the body part of it. We either uh, are very concerned about our weight, or being overweight or obese, or losing flab here and there and so on. So we hit the gym regularly and we do all kinds of things, but then there really are deeper, much deeper issues. And you've also, of course, talked about how we instantly tend to blame our bodies. It's something that happens so easily and readily, it comes to us. uh, I like the point that you made about breath being a good connector of mind and body, watching the breath, understanding it. And you also mentioned, I mean, you also talked about understanding pain, and how pain can be a very useful marker sometimes of helping us understand many things that we don't see on the surface. There's one question that is coming up, which I'm just putting in the middle for all of you to consider. It's a question which is asked by Dharmendra, which is training in a particular way. I mean, since you talked about a training a lot in what you said, uh, is training in a particular way not a conditioning or indoctrination? So it's open for any one of you to look at it at a later stage. So may I invite uh, Harini to share her thoughts on this? Mute. Harini, you have to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Giri, and hello everyone, and thank you, Ananya, um, for really going through that whole discussion and putting together so much. I was really thinking to myself, this is so vast. How am I going to really put any of my thoughts together and bring any coherence? But thanks for making a good start. Um, and ending on my favorite point, which is that we can build a relationship with pain. I think that's something that uh, is an integral part of understanding the mind body connect for me. Um, to me, the body is really the only way in which I can access fully uh, whoever I am in that moment. And this was a very revealing um, experience for me when I started discovering that, because it's so obvious and yet it's so not obvious to all of us. Whatever I may be, we all have images of who we are, what we think we can do, cannot do, what we feel, what our own personalities and what we carry. And then I learned that when I started touching into my body, I was coming in touch with a whole host of things, uh, which completely reframed how I interpreted anything um, from a conscious mind. And I'll tell you a story about it from my own life.
Mhm.
Um, I used to people always love to say about me that, uh, this one's a very giving person. We love these labels about ourselves, right? And others. This one's a very giving person. She's always so full of blah, blah, and she exudes love and all of that. But of course, I always had my little secret that I didn't always want to give, yeah. Matlab. Um, and yet, this narrative had played in my life for so long, and so for as long as I have known, that I almost didn't know that this secret was alive in me. Like I was always operating from that, ha 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 ha, let's keep going. And even Indira has touched upon this in a different way, this struggle that we all have. And I was so um, identified with this idea of who I am,
Mhm.
um, that for a very long time I didn't quite see the internal conflict that I had started building in myself, because
Mhm.
I was really being led by this mental idea of who I am, and what therefore in any situation I can do. When I got into this training and started learning that I can actually notice palpitation in my system, I can notice tension, all the kinds of things that Ananya described. Um, it took a while, but it really started. It was a journey of learning to value what my body was saying in any experience as an important signal into how I was feeling, what I was, what I needed.
Mhm.
Um, and um, at one point, when I was sitting with a lot of conflict around one question of how generous I am, and and
Mhm.
and I had heard from someone I really valued deeply in my life that in a particular event I hadn't been generous enough, and that threw me, like that shattered me. Like, how can I not be generous? Like, how can it be that I am not being seen as generous? And that brought up so much. And well, I sat with it for months and months and months. Um, and I was in touch then for many weeks with a memory from my childhood. When I was about 4 years old, friends had come over, and there was this last bit of chocolate ice cream left in my mom's kitchen.
Mhm.
And this friend of mine wanted it and I wanted it. And she was, of course, the guest. So she had to be given. And I had thrown, must be a tantrum at that age, saying I really want it. And my parents had been perhaps upset about how I had behaved. And admonishment or something had happened. I remember this image of me sitting alone and my parents in the kitchen showing their displeasure and me feeling like I was the worst piece on earth. Right? Um, now this is a daily event that perhaps happens in everyone's life, and yet for me, this event is a marker of how I really began to think that asking is wrong. It's not anybody's fault here. My parents didn't intend it like that. But for some reason, my body stored this memory, this impulse. And perhaps after that event, it hadn't been resolved fully, because most of the times we don't give importance to these events. We think children forget it. But children, in terms of a conscious memory, they forget things. But the body stores an impulse which is very strong, whether it's positive or negative. And so I started, this memory, when it came as if I had been swept off by a storm. And then there was a parallel memory that came up when apparently I had gone to a shop with my grandmother and my mother. And I had not asked for anything, because normally children go to a toy shop and they ask for a lot of things. And I had apparently in that event not asked for anything. And that praise went on forever and ever and ever. And I remembered these innumerable events when either my grandmother or my mother must have said, we took her to the shop and she was so well behaved and she didn't ask for anything. And in my system, these two had got clubbed because also they had happened around the same time. Now, I don't know this consciously, and I had not remembered these events for the longest part of my life. But at one point in time, when I had in my adult life, and especially actually just a year or two ago, when I was really sitting with a very difficult time in my life and navigating a conflict of how I could have responded in a particular situation, how I had been perceived in a very non-generous way, and really seeing what I had needed in that time, what had gone on. And I sat with all the palpitation and anger and blah, blah, blah of everything around an event around the late 30s in my life. And unable to resolve that conflict, unable to really say, no, I know you felt this was not generous, but I really needed this, and I needed to be in a particular way in this situation. And the guilt around needing that was so strong. And when I sat with the physical discomfort of all that, the emotional discomfort of all that, what it took me to was a memory my body had stored. And it took many weeks for that impulse to release, of letting that fossil really dissolve, because that fossil was deeply responsible for how I had behaved in a particular way all my life, which is not right or wrong. But it didn't allow me to really see that there could be many aspects of what I might need in a given moment. And that fossil was a very strong driver of that. That fossil was what my mental model was about me, and that fossil was stored in my body.
Right.
When I let go of that memory, by sitting with it, staying with the sensations, staying with the emotions, my whole conflict around being generous or not generous left. And I had a better way of seeing in a situation what was needed, which could honor what I want and what others want. So I've basically learned, there are many things about the mind-body connect that we can say, but what is most personal to me is that my body is a very, very powerful signal to me of what I hold in any given moment. And when I deny my body that visibility in any experience, in my own awareness, then I'm really operating from a very partial sense, which is basically driven just by a part of my thinking, which may be just the most conscious thoughts in a given time. Um, and my body really will signal to me what it is that my mind wants, what it is that my
Mhm.
mind has been carrying. And so
Right.
body is not just a lump of mass. It is a signal to what my what I've been really carrying as a whole person.
Hmm.
And the mind being really the most significant part of that. And that being our thoughts and emotions and all of that. So, yeah,
Right.
to me, really, the mind body connect mainly is about honoring truly what the body has to reveal. And when we stay anchored in the body, when we pause to really sense into what is going on for me, of course, what I'm thinking and all of that, but also looking into what my body is, then we realize what all goes on for us in that moment, and we also recognize how much we can get fooled if we just pay attention to our most conscious thoughts in a given moment. So,
Hmm.
mindfulness training has really helped me to slow down around any experience, be
Hmm.
more present relatively. And like Ananya said, it's an unending journey. You never reach a destination, I guess. But really, really being present to all of me, and not seeing my mind as and my body as two separate things doing two separate kinds of functions, but really to see them as a whole entity, being present to both as a whole. And so, what are my thoughts, emotions, and sensations? That's what we do in mindfulness. We are present to all three of them as a unit, not as disjointed things. Uh, because they present to us a coherent story of what is driving us in any moment, and then just witnessing that and noticing how those change
Hmm.
and reframe uh, our reality in a given moment. So that's what I've kind of learned through my mindfulness journey. And of course, like I said, the mind body connect is about a whole lot, but really that building that relationship with the deep hidden side of me,
Hmm.
uh, through through my body, uh, is what I really value most.
Hmm. Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harini. I think, I mean, this is a wonderful story. And for me, it also goes back to what we recognize on another note in this domain that we call sometimes as early childhood development. That, there is often the saying that the earliest years last a lifetime. And the two examples that you've provided from your own personal experience, I think, illustrate that very beautifully. And what is fascinating is, of course, the whole idea of the body keeping a score. uh, and you must talk a little, you must mention about the book perhaps at the end, which you talked about when we connected last, about how this is explored very beautifully in that book. um, so to me, I think from what you and Ananya have said, the body is a powerful signal or indicator of what we all hold within. And the better we understand that, the better it is for us and those around us. And again, I think you've gone back to the fundamentals in terms of saying, can we slow down with the experience? Can we be watchful? Can we witness that experience and not really get swept away by it? Uh, Indira, I think right time for you to come in with your, sharing. There's so much that Harini and Ananya have said, and I'm sure you will build on to that.
So thank you, Giri. Thank you, Ananya and Harini. What beautiful sharings, and both of you so different and so deep. So thank you for that. Uh, so I would also like to look at, lay out another kind of canvas for us to paint on. For me, I'd like to start with a little story, another story. Uh, I think I've briefly touched upon it in the earliest session. Uh, 2017, I'd gone out with my siblings on holiday, and I I was extremely weighty in the sense that I was 70 kilos, and I was finding it very, very difficult to walk. I had several aches and pains. I was hobbling literally. I was really taking up the rear, and this was quite the opposite of what I
Mm-hmm.
used to be much earlier. I had severe breathing difficulty, and I was also feeling very sorry for myself. I also realized that nobody even noticed or cared, though these are people who love me, but they just were carrying on, and I was sort of left alone, uh, feeling sorry for myself. So I went along that holiday, and then I came back, and I really decided to do some serious introspection, because in my 20s I used to be extremely strong. I was, I would say at the pinnacle of my fitness, martial arts. If I climbed into a DTC bus, the driver used to say, "Oye, Pahalwan," so it was like that. And I used to actually be able to easily lift the television or whatever. I used to do the shifting of things around in the house and so on. So, and if anybody had any problem, they would call me, because I was also regarded as someone who could resolve things as well because of my strength, physical strength. So I really introspected and said, my goodness, what have I really made of myself? And it was not only the body, but I also realized that I felt like my future was bleak. I used to be the kind of person who used to, leap up in the morning and say, oh, what a bright day lies ahead. And instead, had started sort of looking into the past rather than looking forward into the future, or enjoying the present. Uh, Not as hopeful as I used to be, and so on. So I decided that I really must do something about it. And I said, let me at least see why this has happened and what has happened to me. And I really did not like the fact that I found it so hard to even carry myself forward. And, this, as I said, manifested not only in my body, but
Mm-hmm.
also in my mind. Somehow we tend to block a lot of things in these aspects when we do our work. So my work went on, but even so, it was I used to push myself, and once I got into work, I think I sort of lost myself in it rather than uh, being in the present, so to speak, in a joyful way. But I was blocking a lot of things. I realized that. So looking deeply, I realized that what I felt was happening to me by others was something that I myself was doing to myself, which means that I myself was neglecting myself. I was not, paying adequate attention to what my body needed, what my mind needed. I was, I had already started on the journey of mindfulness. So, yes, I was eating mindfully in the sense of eating slowly, but I was eating several times. I was eating the wrong kinds of food. I was literally dumping on myself, body wise, as well as emotion wise. When I was upset, I was carrying that in my body as well. So I decided to sit with all this and figure out how I would change things. So one thing I did is I began to exercise. I mean, I always loved exercise. I think a lot of us do. And here I'd like to just pause to say that it's one of the most wonderful things that opens up our body. You're so in touch with the moment. And,
Mm-hmm.
I feel so alive when I exercise. And yet I was even depriving my body of that oxygen for it. So I started walking. Uh, not that I ever loved walking. I used to like to run and play things because walking is, slowing down. But I decided I will do that, and I started enjoying that. I also resumed my yoga, and yoga has been a very important part of my life. And I resumed it, but this time I decided I would take it very slowly. I would practice only for 5 or 10 minutes instead of plunging into it, forgetting the long gap that I had had with the exercise. So I
Mm.
really did it in a mindful way by caring for my body, by seeing what it required and seeing what my mind required as well. I would not push myself saying, oh, it doesn't matter if I'm tired. So I received my feelings in those moments and tried to work with them along with my body in a more cooperative way. I also realized that I had had a body mind disconnect, in the sense that there were times that because I was pushing my emotions away, if I had pain, I would just push the pain out of my mind and carry on in the past.
Mhm.
So I started paying attention to many of these things more. So if I did have some pain, or if my joints were creaking, I would pause and give them some rest. So, in this way, I really regained a lot of my health. But I found that the weight was not shifting much. From 70, it had sort of slowly over a year and a half, it had come down to some 65. I was still quite heavy for myself, only because, I used to be about 49, 50 kilos many years ago. But most of us say, oh, that's in the past, it can never happen again, and so on. I said, is that really true? Let me give it a shot. And that's when I also, heard about something called intermittent fasting. And one of my sisters said, it's exercise, all right, but it's also what we eat. It's also what goes in. It's not just what comes out in terms of the exercise, what you burn. So I thought, let me see what I'm eating. And so the journey on this mindful eating happened. And as Harini and Ananya have very amply pointed out, it's such a vast arena. I will focus on some of these things and touch upon a few other things. So the mindful eating meant really looking into what I was burdening on my body, and as I said, dumping literally. And I realized that, when I was a kid, we were very, very healthy in our family. So we had a certain discipline, a certain routine when we would eat. We would eat early. And I'm married to a Bengali. And also, given my long work hours, I used to eat very late. It's also partly a very Bong culture. And I realized that, that was one thing that I can try to stop. And I used to say, oh, but it's impossible. How do you do that? You come back so late, and then food, you start eating at 9:30. You start contemplating on what you will eat at that time. So I said, okay, can I try this? And during COVID, actually even before that, I started this journey on intermittent fasting. I came across a little talk. It just happened by chance. Somebody called Daryl D'Souza, who apparently reversed a lot of his autoimmune conditions. I said, if that is the case, let me try. And I also had a lot of breathing difficulty, if you remember. I mentioned that. I said, is
Yes.
it possible? And I understood that all these, including the weight, are to do with inflammation in the body. And I also learned that people who have cancer, and cancer is also inflammation, the first thing they're told to stop is sugar. So I decided that I will try to work on some of these things, and I started eating 2 meals a day. And I was also a bit scared that I would feel hungry. And a lot of my friends and relatives say, oh, but don't you feel hungry? Aren't you starving by night? But I said, let me try. So for 1 week, I did feel a little hungry. But then I found that this was really, for the first time, I felt that I was actually caring for my body, because this
Mhm.
dumping was reducing. I was carrying so much more than was necessary, that it was like, just lugging baggage, excess baggage, as I went through each day. So that was one part of the journey, which is just eating twice a day instead of eating several times, 3 times, and sometimes just snacking. You see something and then you just reach out and put that in as well into your mouth. So that was a very big turning point for me. Of course, drinking a lot of hot water. And then I stopped the sugar, and I used to also consume alcohol very frequently, which I did for many years. And I said, okay, I've had it for a long time. Let me see if I can sort of give it up. All these was I giving up something? And over a period of time, I realized that, a lot of these external things which we are sort of brainwashed into believing are very in, and what we really want, which are more like desires, are things that are not necessarily helping us. But that was only because I could stop and listen. I listened to my body and paid attention, and started gravitating towards other things that gave me the same, I won't say a fix, but that sugar craving that I have, because I have a sweet tooth. I ate a lot of fruit, which I had stopped eating over so many years. So I would eat a fruit in the middle of the day, and then eat the 2 meals at the end, and so on. So the eating changed a lot, and the exercise, which was my yoga, became so much lighter and so much more beautiful. So, as Ananya said, yoga is also, of course, to do with the breath. So the breathing, the being with the body, with each asana, and the mind being so clear. It was like, dust settling down in a beaker of muddy water. So you're so fully in the present that you can see what you're doing there and then. And it's each minute is a minute which sort of unfolds like another moment of beauty. So I realized that it's far more fun in many ways, listening to my body and listening to my mind, and adopting some of these practices. So that is one part of my story, and I regained my health. So from last December till about June, I sort of steadily lost weight, and I ultimately became about 49 kilos. I was told I was way too thin. So here they say, "Arey, aap to bade kamzor ho gaye." But when I was I was carrying a lot of excess weight, nobody said, "Aap to bilkul kamzor nahi hai." So anyway, I had some nuts and things that put on a little bit of weight. But the point is that the aches and pains have reduced, and I feel much better. The other part of the beauty is also, I feel that I take greater care of myself, my mind, and my emotions. And I'm also much freer in expressing my thoughts, where I'm more mindful about not being hurtful to myself, and also not being hurtful to others. In other words, enjoying better boundaries. So earlier, I used to give and give and give at an extreme cost to my body, which is like I used to work at long hours, and also very often do things that I didn't want to do. And I used to find that also, my body bore the brunt of it, because it would sometimes, I would find that I was clenching myself to do this. And though I really do love giving, who many of us do, but you don't want to do this all the time at your cost. So I found that I was doing that in a more skillful way, and I find that I'm a much happier person in general. Having said that, I would also like to say that I've also learned to listen more to my body as well as my mind. So to pause and sit and look deeply. So if I feel that there is discomfort in a particular situation, I don't try to just push it away, because I do understand that it's going to impact other thoughts as well as my mind, as well as my body. And I'm really not going to now carry more of these pains just for this. And I find that it's more of a win-win situation by dealing with them, rather than shoving them into a locked cupboard or an attic, as I mentioned the last time, both for the body as well as for the mind. I want to just talk about one or two more things. Yeah, another very important thing is sleep. Through my childhood, I think I'd heard as a child that, oh, some of the great leaders, world leaders, hardly slept. And I thought it was quite cool not to sleep. So through my college and through my youth, I used to just barely sleep 4 hours. And it becomes a habit, you know. I would burn the midnight oil and I would say, oh, I'm both owl and fowl. And one of my other sisters said that, look, that's not correct. And so you should be reading up on sleep. And there's a book by somebody called Walker. And how not sleeping can impact you in so many ways, you know, your emotions, your health, even your weight.
Hmm.
So it took me a while to train myself to recognize that I actually needed sleep, because I was so used to it. Whether I slept at 12 or 1 or 2, I would automatically rise at 5. And so slowly I started training myself to try and sleep by 10. Even now it goes to 12 sometimes, but I've negotiated and I sleep usually by about 11 and I get up by 5 or 6. But to increase that from 4 hours to 6, 7, 8 hours, and sometimes it's 8 hours, I've realized that been a journey, and now it's literally delicious. Sleep is delicious, and when you wake up, you feel so fresh, and a lot of those sufferings in your body as well as your mind sort of vanish. So I also strongly advocate sleep. It's also listening to your body as well as your mind. It's about self-care. And the other thing is about work. There are times when there is so much to do, and you're also doing this partly out of self care because you also want to earn yourself the leisure after that, and you also want to finish this so that you can do other fresher things. So it's a balance. But there are times when I find that I'm running, you know, I'm doing this, so my speed has picked up a little bit. And then the next thing, it's picked up a little more and a little more. And I was telling Ananya the other day that it is like I'm still running. You know, it's the inertia of moment. We've studied physics. So you feel when
Yes,
you come back home, you're still running and you're still running. So I'm also learning to pause between these. It's creating these spaces, again, out of care for my body and my mind. So it's when the mind runs, the body also runs. So I've also noted that, and we can try to sort of get them in sync. So I like to use the synonym of syncing as well, just getting the two into sync and using the breath, which is a wonderful vehicle to do that. So just sitting down, and a yoga teacher used to say, Sthiram Sukham Asanam. So if you bring your body to a pause, so it's Sthiram and there is stability in it. Sukham is slowly relax all your muscles. So there is comfort, relaxation. And asanam is you are here. You are totally aware in the present. If you do the same thing to your breath, you find that your breath becomes so deep. So again, it is sthiram, it is very stable breath. It is comfortable breath, and you're aware of your breath. And you bring your mind to one spot so that it's not wandering, and not in a pushing sort of a way, in a gentle way, so that if it wanders, you very gently bring it back. Again, I like to bring it to the tip of my nose or to the third eye center, but to each his or her own. Stay, again, pause, stop, comfortable, and aware. So I just find that these things help me a lot in bringing about the connection in our body and our mind and our breath and our being. And it's a beautiful journey. It's work in progress, a lot of work ahead, but it's fabulous. So thank you so much.
wonderful. I think each one of you has very, very importantly talked about the results that you have obtained by doing things differently, by looking at things differently. And I think to me, there are two or three things that are responsible for that. And that's a theme, I think, which we have carried right from the first session till today, which is really pausing, stopping, witnessing, slowing down. And the other that runs through everything that each one of you has said is learning to be compassionate to oneself, um, taking our own selves a lot more seriously and a lot more lovingly, than ever before, perhaps makes us realize that these things are going to be very critical and important. The third thing, of course, each one of you has still talked about how it is work in progress, and of course, that is a very humbling experience. There's nothing like getting all the results quickly and in one go, and finishing the job, and reaching that state of Satchidananda, or whatever we keep talking about all the time. Some interesting comments. I think I'll begin from the most, the bottom most, before I invite Harini to lead us on to a practice session. So Shreyas Vyas from Gujarat says, we must stop or reduce the intake of three white food items: sugar, maida, and salt. I think that probably causes a lot of havoc. We all know that. Jitendra Soni has this query which you can take up as you go along. He of course hopes that it'll be taken on a secular ground. And the query is, how did the supreme power support, or how will it support in connecting back to oneself? uh, do you let these situations ride you, or do you ride the situations? I mean, I think that's the essence of what he's saying. He invokes a supreme power which probably helps one take these decisions and so on. Earlier, Neha Sharma talked about body and mind are indeed deeply intertwined. The day I go for cycling or do dance workout or do yoga, I'm much more happier and rejuvenated. I think that's those are some of the comments that are coming in at this point in time. So for our friends and colleagues, we have requested Harini to help us out on a visualization exercise for a few minutes. So over to you, Harini. Do lead us into this exercise.
Okay, thank you, Giri. Uh, so we'll just do a short exercise, just sensing experientially the conversation we've had about the mind body connect. And I was wondering if either Ananya or Indira could help with the bell. I don't have a bell here. Do you have a? Okay, thank you, Indira. And we can start with the bell, and I think you will sense when it is the end of the practice, and you can just end it, or we'll see how it goes. So we can just, yeah, start with the bell. Just getting into a comfortable and alert position. Just getting a sense of our body sitting. And making contact with the ground or the cushion that we may be sitting on. Just as a way of slowing down our mind. Just bringing our attention on that contact as a way of simply just coming into the here and now. Just noticing what that contact with the ground feels like. whatever it may be. And then gently bringing into our awareness any image or memory of a person or an experience that we feel grateful about. It may be someone who has met us with a lot of kindness, or it may be someone with whom we've had a lot of fun, or an experience in which we felt very safe or content. Or maybe just a memory of time with nature where we were in touch with beauty. Just taking a few moments to get in touch with this image. Not so much thinking too much about it, just being in touch with this memory or image. As if it was right here, present in front of us. And as we are in touch with this image, noticing how we feel. What is the feeling present right now? There could be joy, peace, gratitude, maybe even some pain. Sometimes it's painful to remember joy, and that's okay if that's what is present. Just getting in touch with whatever emotion is present right now. And as you notice the emotion, also bringing in attention, the body. How is it to experience this feeling in the body? Where is this experience most present in the body? And what does it feel like? Is it the heart space, the head space, the belly, the back, the limbs? any part of your body, just bringing to attention the sensations that we notice as we engage with this feeling, this emotion, and just staying with those sensations. Just sensing how the image, the emotions it brought up, and the sensations are all one experience. And slowly bringing back attention to this talk, opening our eyes when we are ready, and we can have the bell whenever it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Harini. I think this was a very so. I mean, respond to some of these uh, comments that have come in. Uh, First question
Giri,
was,
we can't hear you. I think, Indira, can you mute your mic? You're not.
can you
Yeah.
hear me? Am I audible? Okay. Harini, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was just saying it's okay.
okay, great. So I think the first question that was raised by Dharmendra was, uh, since all of you have alluded to some form of training or getting into some way to address these uh, issues, the question that he asks is training in a particular way not a conditioning or indoctrination? So would any one of you want to respond to that? How was it different? For example, I think each one of you has talked about the pause, the slowing down, the witnessing. To me, that seems to be the essence of what we call here as training. So he seems to believe that it's a form of conditioning or indoctrination. Any responses on that?
I could try.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, to some extent it is a kind of conditioning. Like you're getting into the habit of something. So um, it is some conditioning. I'm not sure about indoctrination.
Hmm.
Um, but I think the way I would see it is in most indoctrination, um, we're we're calling it indoctrination because we're not allowed to see for ourselves what an experience is about.
Hmm.
There
In fact,
is
it's on the other way around. It's the other way around.
yeah,
Yeah, actually.
it is
Mm.
expected to be a borrowed wisdom which we are expected to take as it is. It
Right.
could be anything, right?
Right.
Whereas here, there are some practices that definitely are offered. But how that practice is experienced by us, how we see it interacting, um, how we see what we see as the outcomes of that for us are our own. At least that's how mindfulness trains you. And that's what I
Right.
think the Buddha also said, don't believe me, test everything from your own experience.
Right.
Um, So I think that is valuable, and I'm not therefore sure I would say is it indoctrination or is it not, and because these words mean very different things for very different people. But do I feel like I am being indoctrinated? No. Do I feel that there's definitely a set of recommendations um, by great people who have gone through this path and who have benefited? Yes, they are. And now I'm taking on those, testing them in my own life, seeing what I'm able to take on at this point.
Right.
Also recognizing that what I may not see as beneficial may I may either not be beneficial, or it may not be beneficial to me because of the stage in which I am, because I'm not
Right.
really able to take it on as a manifestation of who I am today, and both are okay. So I think it's really being in awareness is really about that, like using your own current state of wisdom, evolution, whatever you call it, to
Yeah.
sense what one thing does for you and seeing if you would like to make it a part of your life. That's
Okay.
how I
Okay.
see it.
Wonderful. I think that's very well put. Um, I'm going to Jitendra Soni's question, and I'm also trying to connect that with something that Ananya mentioned in the beginning. In fact, she talked about the body, mind, and spirit. And in a sense, I mean, we have not really talked so much about the spirit. Goes back to earlier conversations where uh, one talked about the soul, uh, in some sense, though we didn't address that, uh, you know, uh, directly or deeply. So the query is there a supreme power that is invoked in connecting back to oneself? What do your experiences say? Is it all in that sense uh, merely a cognitive exercise of thinking? The pausing, waiting, seeing, watching. Is that all cognitive? Is there something deeper in terms of the spirit, the supreme power? Ananya, would you want to? Are there any reflections on this? I mean, you did mention about the spirit in the beginning.
Uh, Let me try to phrase it. Mm, to me, mindfulness practice by itself is a direct experience. It isn't cognitive as far as my own experience is concerned. It's the feeling. It's very direct in terms of what am I experiencing right
Hmm.
at this point in time. And when we say of mind, body, and spirit, uh, I mean, the way I have looked into
Hmm.
it or possibly used it is that um, there is
Hmm.
something very deep within us. I don't know if this is what we call soul or whatever. I mean, we all look
Right.
into it in different ways, and we all have different approaches. And I'm not here to kind of talk about
Hmm.
one approach over the other. But I feel that when we just allow ourselves to directly experience something, um, there is uh, there there is something much more
Right.
which comes up to us. Like I just gave you the example of my coccyx pain. Even if I take that as an example, I have often felt that I have had this pain now for years. I think that pain I started feeling it around 2014. But as I experienced that pain, what I have understood is that when I allowed myself to sit with this pain and just to be, I mean, not to kind of force myself to let go of that pain. Why do there? Why should be you here? I'm this, I'm that. Not doing that, but just let that pain be. It spoke to me in a
Mhm.
different way, and in that sense, I would say it's much more than mind and body. It's the spirit which is getting invoked here in some way, because it told me, hey, look at yourself. Possibly you have certain things which you have suppressed, or maybe you have anger at this point in time, or whatever that might be. And that is what I'm trying to express myself. And there have been times when I have sat still, I have sat quiet, and I've allowed that experience to come up and not push it down, or just say, move away, move away. No, I have allowed that experience of that pain to come up. And in allowing that experience to come up, there has been a direct touch with that experience of that pain.
Mhm.
And that's pain, as you allow yourselves to be with your breath, with the pain, there is a way at times it speaks to you. And that speaking to me is a very direct way of understanding your body. And what Harini talked about is that the memories that the body carry, there are so many memories. So it's actually some of the memories possibly it was bringing up for me, or brings up for me even today. So as I say this, it's not that I'm completely out of that pain. It's there, but it's way manageable. It's something that I've established a love affair with that pain of mine, trying to understand it much more. So I would say that that's where the connect comes in. It's about the mind, body, and the direct experiencing of it, which is way beyond the mind and the body. It's the whole organism, and that's where your spirit comes in.
Okay. Okay. So I think, I mean, if I've understood you right, you're talking of a much higher level of awareness that seems to go beyond this mind body connect, actually. Uh, there aren't any more comments at this point in time, but then I do believe that this is an area, this is something that we need to explore much more of. And I think, considering the experiences that each one of you has shared from your own lives, I hope this makes, you know, us all reflect on our own personal experiences. I'm sure each one of us has a set of experiences and narratives and stories which resonate with the things that you have said. I was just wondering, I mean, I know this is coming very suddenly from my side, but I'm just wondering if, for the benefit of of all of us listening to you all, to the three of you, are there any, would you want to recommend any pieces of literature that one can refer to? I mean, I'm not asking this in the sense of reviewing a piece of literature. Is there any particular book? Is there any particular place that one can further go to, maybe even on the internet, and look up and learn more about this? Would anyone want to respond to that?
Maybe I'll suggest a few, and I'm sure Indira and Harini will also have. Um, I would suggest, if we are interested to understand about the body and its connect with various kinds of disease, including addiction, different kinds of addiction, which also includes work addiction. I would really recommend Dr. Gabor Mate. He's a Canadian physician, and he has a book called When the Body Says No. He has many books, and some of his
Can you
talks
just
are
spell his name out, Ananya?
Dr. Gabor, Gabor,
Okay.
Mate, Mate. He's a Canadian
Okay.
physician. So he is one that I would recommend to listen
Okay.
to, and then if you find him interesting, you could buy his books. The
Right.
other is Dr. Peter Levine.
Okay.
He has also done a lot of work around trauma.
Mm-hmm.
The third, I think I had already talked about Full Catastrophe Living by John Kabat-Zinn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another book that I can really recommend for anyone with a lot of physical and emotional pain,
Mm-hmm.
and from whom I have learned a lot in dealing with pain.
Mm-hmm.
And
What is the
finally,
name of the
I
book
would
on full catastrophic
full
living?
catastrophe living, full catastrophe. He says that life is a catastrophe, and then we experience it in all its wholeness. So that's how he gave
Okay.
this name. And he's in fact one of the pioneers of mindfulness-based stress reduction program. So
Right.
he's very well known for that. Kabat-Zinn is another. And finally, there is a very beautiful book on leadership, using body, particularly martial arts. It's called
Mm-hmm.
the Leadership Dojo. By
The leadership, come again. Sorry.
Dojo, Dojo.
Okay.
The Leadership Dojo, and this is the cover. It's by Richard Strozzi Heckler. Can you see this? I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah, I don't
Right.
know if it
Yeah.
can be seen. So it's by Richard Strozzi Heckler. It's a beautiful book actually on
Mm-hmm.
on leadership, and there he talks about the embodiment of the body and the mind and the spirit. So it's
Right.
beautiful. So these are some of
Thank
my
you.
recommendations.
Thank you so much for that. Ananya and Harini, sorry, Indira and Harini, do you have anything to add to that very, very rich list that Ananya has mentioned?
Uh, I'd like to just talk about the Shivananda school of yoga. It's worth
Mm-hmm.
looking at the website and figuring out whether there's anything that suits you. So there are books by under the aegis of the Bihar School of Yoga,
Okay.
which are really wonderful books
Okay.
on different aspects of yoga, on the asanas, on the connections, on connection
Wonderful.
of
Yeah.
our mind with diseases, specific
Right.
diseases such as asthma, etc. So there is a host of them. There is one
Right.
specific, the basic one on asanas, and also a host of them. So I like that a lot. I also like someone called John Sarno, who has
Mm-hmm.
talked about many of these pains, including heart attacks as well as back pain, and how you can reverse it with the mind. It's the mind that does a lot to our bodies. So
Mm-hmm.
I like those. And of course, I think Harley's already mentioned it, but I just thought I will still talk about The Body Keeps the Score. Both
Mm.
Harini and Ananya have mentioned this in the past in our various conversations. It's a
Right.
wonderful book. It's on how the body stores trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
that. I also just want to briefly touch upon this point on the soul. I mean, I don't claim to again be somebody who's very knowledgeable in these things, but we are schooled in the philosophy that believes that, that says that there is the soul and soul, and there is a jivatma and a paramatma, so that we are getting connected in a way. In many of these philosophies, including the Buddhist one, there is a deep sense of interconnectedness with all things. We can talk more about it at some point, but there is a deep there is a getting in touch with ourselves, and there is a deep sense of interconnectedness and understanding that we are impermanent. So that is the idea of impermanence, and there is a
Mm-hmm.
idea of what we call emptiness, which is that every one of us is empty without the other self. So I am empty in the sense I am devoid. I am nothing devoid of, say, Harini, Ananya, and you. In other words, you also flow in me, I flow in you.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a lot to be spoken of and discussed in that area as well, in case somebody is interested or people are.
Right.
We
Right.
can talk about that at some point as well. I just thought I'll say that. Thank you
Sure.
so much.
Yeah, I think that we must definitely take that journey as we go along. So I think at this stage, let me, uh, end this wonderful session that we've had. And again, as I said, this year, 2020, has been particularly traumatic and anxiety ridden, if I were to put it that way, uh, for many of us. And I think we've all had our stories in terms of how uh, all our lives have been appended, affected, and so on by what has been happening over the last several months. uh, Here's hoping that 2021 begins on a note of hope, and I'm sure we are reaching there pretty quickly. So when we meet in 2021, we will continue this journey. I just wanted to share with my friends that all of these conversations that we are doing are to bring all of us together in a collective. Maybe the number is small now, but as we go along, more and more friends and colleagues keep joining. And the very purpose of the Adda is to, uh, I think, believe in the hope and believe and hope that another world is indeed possible as we go along. So we will get back to all of you with the date of the next mindfulness sessions. But till then, enjoy, have a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year. Take care, stay safe, and be happy. Bye bye.
Bye.